Hey, welcome everyone to Tanya Outside In. We're up to chapter Yud Daled, and we are finishing really the mechanics of the Benoni. We we introduced the Nefesh Bahamis, the human soul in chapter one. Then we en- when then we introduced the godly soul in chapter two. Then chapter three, we started talking about the kind of makeup of the godly soul, the mechanics of the godly soul. Then chapter four, we spoke about Torah and sorry, we spoke about really Torah and mitzvahs with the emphasis on mitzvahs. Chapter five, we spoke about Torah. Chapter six, seven, and eight, we spoke about Sitra Achra and Klippa. Chapter 9, we started to talk about the relationship between the godly soul and the animal soul. Then chapter 10, we put it into practice. We spoke about the tzaddik and the two types of tzaddik. Chapter 11, we spoke about the two types of rasha. Then chapter 12, we introduced, so to speak, the star of the show, the Benoni. And there's three chapters dedicated to discussing the inner mechanics, the inner consciousness of the Benoni. And as we said, the Benoni is a man who never sins and is not able to sin. He's not able to do something against the will of God, but for a very different reason than the tzaddik. The tzaddik also can't do something against the will of God. Why? Because the tzaddik is aligned with God. The tzaddik is godly. He's godly, so it's like he's not going to do something against God's wishes because that's what he is. That's who he is. Whereas the Benoni is not godly. The Benoni is a regular person, like you and me. We're all Beinonim. Yeah, we don't do Averas and we only do mitzvahs, but not because we don't have any attraction to doing something wrong, and not because we're always like, compelled to do the right thing. It's just we know that that's the right thing to do, and we know that that's the wrong thing to do. And for various reasons, the main reason is really that you have some kind of awareness of God. You're aware that God is watching to varying degrees, to whatever degree that would be. But we have some kind of awareness of God, and that prevents us from doing what's wrong, and that compels us to do what's right. So we're not doing what's right and not doing what's wrong because that's who we are. We're doing what's right and not doing what's wrong because that's right and that's wrong, and I don't want to do the wrong thing, and I want to do the right thing. It's not like a natural avoider. So now we're into the we now that's basically 12, 13, 14. Okay, so we're into chapter 14, which is the end of the mechanics of the Benoni. And there's like a famous, I mean, in my mind it's famous. It's like the famous pep talk that the Rebbe writes, the kind of not the monologue, what's it called? A soliloquy, is that the word? A soliloquy when you like, is it a soliloquy? Or monologue when you talk to yourself? Is that a soliloquy? What's a soliloquy? Gabriel, remember what a soliloquy is? Anyway, so it's like like an inner pep talk, a monologue, whatever you want to call it, an inner pep talk. So it's very. I mean, we could break it down. It's like every few words is like a huge topic to discuss. And maybe we'll spend some time. We're not going to do that much in the text today because I want to get into the words here because it's really the Rebbe really put huge weight into each of the words here, like with the whole Sefer, but here it feels a little bit more even maybe. Okay, Perek Yud Daled. We're on page. It's page 38. Okay, second line. Perek Yud Daled. V'hinei midas benoni hi midas kol adam v'achrei kol adam yimshoich. That the quality of the benoni, the midas of the benoni, the inner world of the benoni, is the inner world of everyone, and after it we must strive. That's what we're here to be. We're here to be Beinonim. We are, it's not expected of us to be perfectly aligned with God on an inner level, but it is expected of us to behave correctly. That is expected.
This is the Perek. This is the Perek. He's explaining now what it means to be a Jew.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Basically, I mean, these three proc. I don't know why. I don't. I'm not bucky enough to know what the difference really between 12, 13, 14 is. Like exactly what was going through the Rebbe's mind here. But they're all. But I hear what you're saying, Gabriel. This is the bit where it's like, so this is where we are enjoined to be a Benoni. The Rebbe says the level of a Benoni is accessible to everyone, and I know that in the world of Tanya, when you realize that a Russia is someone who just does one small Avera once in a while, well, everybody's, well, then I'm a Russia. Yeah, but it's not true. We're all Beinonim. We're all Beinonim who occasionally slip. But we really are, meaning that's what the Rebbe says. We're Beinonim. And we have to strive to be a Benoni. And if we do something wrong, we have to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back to being a Benoni. Shekol Adam Yachol Liyos Benoni. As the Rebbe says, that every man is able to be a Beinoni, b'chol eis b'chol shah, every time, all the time. Ki a Beinoni eino mois bara. Why? Because a Beinoni is not disgusted and repulsed by selfishness. He quite likes it, actually. Yeah, she said, "Dava musale." That's to do with the heart. Yeah. V'loi kore itim Shabbos, but not all times are the same. And as sumer say tov, there's the idea of turning away from evil and from doing good. What does that mean? B'poil mamash, b'maisa dibim machshavish behem. Habchira hayoichles v'harashus nasun l'chol adam la'asois v'ledaber lachshoiv gam mashu negetavas liboy. That man is in control of his behavior. Full stop. Period. Whatever side of the Atlantic you're on. Man is in control of his behavior. We are in control of our behavior. That is probably the most important thing that I think I could ever say. We are in control of our behavior. No one can cause us to behave in a certain way. We choose. We always choose. And if you don't choose, then you need to be in an institution.
Shmuel, I've heard you say that we're not our thoughts. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Are we our speech?
No, chas v'shalom.
Are we our action?
Even less.
So what is behavior of those three? Is none of those.
Behavior's all three. That's behavior.
So you
Thought,
just said we're in
action.
control. If we're not those, how are we in control?
You're in control of your thought, speech, and action.
But it's not you. Understood. Okay.
That's why you're in control of it.
Got it. Makes sense.
So this is the Rebbe says it here very clearly that you are in control of your behavior. He puts the responsibility squarely on our shoulders for how we think, how we speak, and how we act. It's like when your kid does something wrong and he says, well, well, he told me to do it. It's not a heta. You don't get away with that.
It's funny when you just going back. It's funny that you said that. If you said it's not you, that's why you're in control of it. You would think if it's you, you would be in control of it because that's you.
That's exactly what you said. That's the bit that you're not in control of the you. Because to control there's lots of you is a relative term. What are you? So when you're talking about your behavior, you could be your emotions. When you're talking about your emotions, you could be your intellect. When you're talking about your intellect, you could be your ratzon, your will. So the you is always the level above that. So when it comes to emotions, are you in control of your emotions? Well, it's a big job. To be in control of your emotions is a big job. But you can be in control of your emotions but it's a very big job. And that's the Tanya is going to get there eventually. But from my understanding of the Tanya is really that's what the Tanya is about changing who you are, not how you behave. We don't talk about that because the simple reading of Tanya is it's about behavioral perfection. But when you really get into the Tanya, I feel, according to how I see it, is the Tanya really wants you to transform yourself. And it takes for granted that the behavior is, number one, a relatively simple thing to fix. And number two, as we've said over and over and over, the good behavior feeds back into the system, and you start to identify with the good behavior and you actually become good. It's like I've said over and over, if you fooled your wife into believing that you're a tzaddik, you're a tzaddik. You did it. That's it. You did it. If you can fool your wife, meaning that as you...
Miller says that all the time. Be a good, your whole life, be an actor. Let them think you're good.
Yeah, that's it. But the next part to that is it actually works.
Right.
It feeds
But
back into
that's only when you become a tzaddik and you transform your nefesh habahamis to actually want those things.
That's how you transform your nefesh habahamis.
That's
how you do it, by behaving.
The Tanya does talk about that.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Of course it talks about that. Of course it talks about that. But that's...
I thought you said that's not what Tanya is about.
No, the basic reading of Tanya is it's about behavioral perfection. But when you really get into it, when you really get right into get into the end of that, because a lot of people pay more attention to the beginning chapters because few people get through the whole thing and put real time into the later chapters. So it's all about, a Benoni is someone who never does a sin ever. Yeah, and a Russia is somebody who does one teeny little sin in thought or speech or action once every couple of months. So obviously we're that, and we're striving to be the guy who never does anything wrong. But once you've gotten to the end of the journey, gone through the whole Tanya, you'll realize that really the not doing anything wrong is just pull yourself together, man. Stop being stupid and start behaving correctly. Okay, fine, done. Now let's start talking about transforming your inner world. That's, you hear what I'm saying? It's like, because we're so like, I do in a very, it's like, how could I behave perfectly? Yeah, you can. You really can.
This chapter explains really what the Tanya is all about, which is that is for everyone. This is the midah of Kol Adam. Everyone can perfect his action, but now are you ready to become a man and try to be a man, perfect your action? Now are you ready to try to change yourself?
And that's going to be the next. So then after chapter Yud Daled, then he has then he has, after chapter 14, surprise, surprise, is chapter 15. Yeah, and in chapter 15, he explains two types of Benoni, where one is actually actively involved in the struggle and one isn't. And then 16, 17, Gabriel, according to exactly what you just said, is now the work of transforming your inner world through the right kind of thinking, where you actually transform the emotions to become more in line with God. So it is exactly what you're saying, yeah. So yeah.
Isn't behavior a manifestation of who you are, though?
Yes.
Like you just said, you are not your behavior.
And yes.
Okay, so
it's a manifestation of it's clothing.
Yeah.
What do you see from me right now? Yeah.
Right.
You see that I'm a Haredi Jew.
Right.
But I could go and get changed into any clothes I want.
Right.
I could dress up. So they do express me, but at the same time they're just clothing.
Right.
So I can actually change them. And if I start dressing like a beach bum for long enough, I'll start behaving like a beach bum, start thinking like a beach bum. Okay. So he says, but Reshus Nasuna L'chol Adam. It's just the way he says it is so powerful. Permission is given to every man to do, to speak, and to think also against the desires of his heart and to do the exact opposite. Every man, that the permission is given. Isn't that an amazing way of saying it? Yeah, every man every man has permission to go against what he wants to do and to do the right thing, whether that's in speech, in thought, speech, or in action. Every man has permission. Exactly. He just says every man has permission. It must be from God.
Right.
But that's what it means. It's an interesting way of saying it. Instead of saying every man can, it's every man has permission. It's just I can't quite articulate what it feels right. You know what I'm saying? That feels like the right thing to say, but I can't quite articulate that. To go exactly against, gam ki gam b'shah shalev chomed misava ezatai v'gashmias, because even at the moment when the heart is deeply desirous for any kind of material pleasure, and he just says beheta or be'issa chas v'shalom, whether it's permissible or forbidden, God forbid, which is a very deep point. Because if you grow up in the right place and your heart is burning with desire, it could be that you might be tempted to eat milk 5 hours after you ate meat as opposed to 6 hours. Yeah. Or to say something that's, you shouldn't really say. Yeah, or to act in a way that's not really fitting. That's if you grew up in the right place and you had the right experiences. But it could be that you grew up in the wrong place and had the wrong experiences, and all of a sudden the battles between, theft or murder or adultery or whatever it is, if a person grows up with corrupt parents and sees his parents doing things that are dishonest, or he saw one of his parents treat to another parent or something like that. Yeah, I mean, his whole world is going to be very different to parents who didn't do that, or who taught him to be honest. It's a different world when you have a parent who is. I mean, I try to be with my children. I try to be with myself anyway, but especially my children, without any, what's the word, deviation in honesty, with no concession to the nth degree. That's a real value of mine. So whenever I'm in a doubt, I'll always go. I'll always make sure that I'll pay extra or I'll do that, and I'll let my kids know. I'll let them see, because that's so they grow up, and it becomes to the point where the idea of I'll make a joke. What was it? I can't remember. I did something. I said to one of my kids, we'll just go. We won't give it back. I can't remember. Maybe they overchanged me or something. And I said, come on, we're just gonna go. And it wasn't, they knew I was joking immediately. It was just, I would never do that. That's how it should be. But then once you train your children to that kind of sensitivity to stealing, for example, now your child has been set up for success, and his battle's going to be, in a completely different place than the kid who watched his parents, Okay. So he says, Beheta or be'issa, chas v'shalom, meaning there's not really much difference. And for us, for us put together people, Baruch Hashem, that's a very important line. Because as I've said, in my mind, one of the not tragedies, but a very something that compromises us in my Haredi Jerusalem world is the way we refer to the Umos Ha'olam, to the Goyim.
Yeah.
That we think of them as, as barbarians with axes, and and then that means that the benchmark is so low down. Not benchmark, what do you call it? The bar.
Oh.
The bar is so low when you think that all you need to do is not kill people and not steal, you know, that's just the bar is so low, and that's not true. For us, the bar should be high, like Rav Manis said, that the fight of the Jew is not between animal and human. The fight of the Jew is between being human and being godly. That is our battle. Our battlefront is to not be human, to be godly. Yachol is God. So it's always in his power, even at the moment when his heart is burning to do that thing that he shouldn't be doing, whether it's permissible or forbidden, but it's not for him. Yachol is gabe ulasiach datoi mimenu legamrei. He is able to strengthen himself and to be Masiach Das. Except for Gabriel, someone has a translation for Masiach Das. Please. To disidentify. To disidentify. Everyone's going, yeah, that you're able to disidentify. Legamre, completely. V'omru leliboy. And now this is the pep talk. So I'm gonna read through it quickly, and then I'll try and unpack it. B'ezrat Hashem. So I'll read it quickly, but with the translation, then we'll go back, okay? So this is what he says in his heart. I don't want to be a Russia even for one moment. Because I don't want to be separate from a God, from Hashem's unity in any way. Because it's written that your averas, your sins make a wall, a separation. I really want to be davik to him. I want to cling to him. Nafshi ruchin nishmasi. Bizlabshem b'shloish levushav yizbrach. That they should become enclosed in the three garments. Shemaisa diba machshava b'Hashem esrasav mitzvoisav. That is thought, speech, and action in Hashem's Torah and of His mitzvahs. Me'ava mesuser shebelibi. From the hidden, concealed love that's in my heart, for Hashem, that exists in the heart of all of Yisrael, that are called the lovers of His name. And even the lowliest of the low, is able to give up his life for Kiddush Hashem. And I am definitely not lower than him. Only because it enters into me a ruach of a spirit of insanity. And it appears to me or to him, so it's the guy, the lowest of the low, that even during this Avera, he will remain intact with his Yiddishkeit, and that his soul will not be separated from God. And he also forgets this innate love that's in his heart for God. But I don't want to be a shoiter like him, a fool like him, to deny the truth. That's the pep talk. There's so much gold to be mined from this. I'm going to pick out a few points. I'm not going to get into everything. I'm not qualified to get into everything as well, but just to pick out a few points. He says, I don't want to be a fool. I don't want to be a Russia. That's a very selfish thing to say. It's like I'm not going to cheat on my wife. Why? Because I don't want to be called an adulterer. But what's with the wife?
But he said, "Any like ain't any rights of the I don't want to be." He said, "I don't
Yeah.
want people to say."
No, he says, I don't want to be a Russia. So that's like saying, well, I'm not going to cheat on my wife because I don't want to be an adulterer. What about your wife? He's showing you what he does here is it's genius is an insult to the Rebbe, but it's just so clever how he's showing you how you use your selfishness against your selfishness. He's not expecting you to turn around and say, God deserves more from me. How could I do such a thing to God? How could God have to suffer this indignation for my bad behavior? He's not saying that. He's just like, oh, I don't want to be a Russia. That's a really realistic thing to say. When you're in the throes of in the throes of wanting to do something that's not right, yeah. Or like let's put it into that, plug it back into that idea of a man who's being tempted to be how'd you say it? To be tempted to be infidel, not infidel.
Well, an adulterer,
Yeah, but being tempted to
infidelity.
there's a whether the now being tempted to infidelity, yeah.
Unfaithful.
Being tempted to be unfaithful. Yeah, he's in the situation where it's a red alert situation. Yeah, it's a difficult situation. He needs to do whatever he can to get out of that. And it's right now, it's just emergency mode, whatever it takes. That's what the Rebbe is saying. He's like, at this point, he's like, I don't want to be a Russia. I don't want to be a Russia. And then he goes a little bit more elevated. And he's like, I don't want to be separate from God. But it's still selfish. Eineni roitz lios Russia. Ve'eineni roitz lios muvdal v'nifrad chas v'sham Hashem echad. I don't want to be them. Rak ani roitz l'dabka boy. You hear this? I want to be davik to Hashem. So first it's I don't want to be a Russia. Second, it's I don't want to be separated from God. Thirdly, it's I want to be united with God. Yeah? And then he says, when he speaks that out a little bit. And then he says, and even the lowliest of the low are capable of giving up their life for God. And he's able to give up his life for God. I can't just give up this little pleasure for right now. It's all so low lishma. but it's not Gehenna. He didn't get to talking about Gehenna yet. And I think personally the reason is that when somebody's in this kind of situation, they don't believe in Gehenna. Even in the best of situations, people don't usually believe in Gehenna. So in this situation, I just feel it goes out the window. So he's using all of these intelligent, selfish tools, whatever you want to call them, to defend himself against this onslaught of desire. So he says, this is the next thing. He's like, I'm not lower than I'm not like the lowest of the low. I'm better than that. And then comes the big one, yeah. The word anoichi. Before this, he was just saying ani, ve'eineni. Anoichi is the first word of the Ten Commandments. There's two words for I in Hebrew, ani and anoichi. Like anoichi, you would never use that. Ani, you say, ani, what's so now he turns up the gas, as he really turns on the guyver at this point, yeah? And this fool is seeing that it's like, I don't want to be a fool like him. Basically, the Rebbe just gave you like every kind of selfish tool that you can use to get you out of this potentially dangerous situation.
But that's the essence of the Benoni. He has to come up with these selfish ways
Exactly.
to do it.
This
a
is-
Tzaddik wouldn't say that.
He would never
because-
need to say that
That's right.
because he's
Yeah.
completely aligned.
Yeah.
So it's exactly it's exactly what my dad just said there is that this is what this is, but this is important. This is only a band-aid, like an emergency. This is an emergency measure for the Benoni, because usually the Benoni he doesn't have to pull on the I. He's got an awareness of the presence of God. So he's not going
get
to
into that situation where he was desperate to not do an Avela.
But if he did, then he would be able to fall on all of this.
Yeah.
But exactly the point, when he is living his regular life, he's aware of God. So he might like to eat that tray food. He could look at it and go, well, that looks really delicious. But I'm standing in front of God. I'm not going to do that. It doesn't even cross his mind to actually do it, literally. But that's the default situation of the Benoni, is that he is aware of the presence of God. And how can you do something against the will of God right in front of him? Like if he was to turn his back or something, or if he was to close his eyes for a minute, then we could talk about it. But he's there, right there in front of me, looking at me, so I can't do that. But when that goes away, and it's not all times are equal. That's why the Rebbe said before that not all times are equal. When you're in a difficult situation, yeah, and you don't feel that you're not in the presence of God, yeah. In fact, you're only in your own presence. Use that. Use your own presence. That's called. Anyone can remember what that's called? The idea of using the thing against itself.
Forest.
What?
Handle of the axe comes from the forest.
Yeah. The handle from the axe comes from the forest.
The quote Matisyahu.
Yeah, that's where the Alter Rebbe got it from Matisyahu. The handle from the axe comes from the forest. That was actually, by the way, last week's Haftorah was a Vadia, which that was what the Gemara actually uses that term for. The handle from the axe comes from the forest, because Avadia was a Edomite convert, and he prophesied the downfall of Edom. So it was the handle from the axe comes from the forest. That's really what it was to do with, but we use it in all kinds of applications. But this is exactly the point, is what is it that makes you want to do the Avera? Is my own independent, very real sense of self. So use that again, turn it on itself. Like, I'm better than that. Like, we've spoken over the years, that idea of the guy. We've said the difference between the guy who hits his wife, yeah, Chas v'shalom, and she runs off screaming. He goes into the bedroom. He puts his head in his hands, and he starts saying to himself, "I can't believe I did that. I am so much more than that. I can't believe what I've fallen to. I can't believe what I've become." Yeah, that is not tshuva. Tshuva is the man who goes back to his bedroom and thinks, "I can't believe what my wife has to put up with. I can't believe she has to go through this." That's tshuva. And we've spoken over the years that that's what it's about. It's about putting our emphasis on Hashem and not on ourselves. But the Rebbe is giving us a different scenario here. It's a situation where we're not in that elevated state in any way. We're in the lowest state. What does it mean, the lowest state? It means that your sense of self is absolutely utter. You're just in a very, very profound sense of self. So use that against yourself. Ani lo yotze lios rasha, ani lo shote kamoyu, va'eineni. I don't want to. Ani. Yeah, use that against yourself, and you'll see. And everyone knows this as well. If you can just, when you're on a diet and you've decided that you're going to go for that piece of chocolate, and you're able to delay it for just
half a second.
It goes, And then you look at, and then you could be sitting there in front of a room of chocolate and you wouldn't be tempted anymore. It just wafts through. Those tivers, they just waft through. And as they're wafting through, it's like you can't imagine not doing it. It's like Mount Everest. You can't, and then if you just hold tight for just a couple of moments, yeah, that Mount Everest just goes like this and disappears. Legamre.
Becomes a hair.
What?
It becomes a hair.
Becomes a hair. Bidyu, says the Gemara. What's the time? Let's go a little bit longer. Masha'ain Kain. Now that's to do with behavior, yeah? That's not the case, but that's not the same when it comes to my actual emotions, the hainu, which means sheheram mois mamash believe sinu betachlisina or afilu shaloi betachlisina, that depending on what kind of tzaddik, that idea of feeling repulsed by anything that's not aligned with Ratzon Hashem, yeah. That is impossible that will be absolutely true in the Benoni. He can pretend that he's like repulsed by the wrong thing, yeah, but he's not really, yeah. The only person who has that actual experience of being revolted and repulsed by things that aren't absolutely aligned with the will of God is the tzaddik, who he has ava b'tanugim, a love of pleasures, which is a taste of olam haba. V'alza amru Chazal, and this is what Chazal said, Olamacha tira b'chayecha, that you saw your world in your life. Meaning, for the big tzaddikim, they actually tasted what it means, the next world in this world, which is the pleasure of your relationship with Hashem, as opposed to the building of your relationship with Hashem, which is where we're holding at. And not every man merits this, because this is like receiving reward. That it's a gift. This is the famous part of the Tanya where people say, well, according to the Tanya, becoming a tzaddik is a gift from God. Yeah, and that's what he seems to say here. But it's more complicated than that, and you can achieve levels of tzedkus with hard work. Yeah.
What you just said about the tzaddik enjoying the next world in this world, is that the same lahavdil as dying while you're still alive, like he says in the claiming?
Not really. Eliezer just asked if this idea of experiencing the next world in this world is like dying while you're alive. I mean, you could kind of poetically say that maybe is what it's saying.
Same idea?
You mean like killing yourself?
No, I'm saying that's what he's saying in that book, is that the real level of surrender. And
so yeah, the way he's saying it, he's probably referring to this, yeah, the way he's saying it. But being like dying in this life usually refers to like working very hard to overcome yourself. But once you've actually, so to speak, died, and you've ascended from your own independent selfhood, which means you look exactly the same, you sound the same, you think the same, you act the same, but there's just no one there. Which is really, that's total liberation. That's what we're looking for. When there's no one there to get angry, there's no one there to get upset. There's just mitzvah. There's just the Rabboni Shloim. There's just light. You're just a whole. But you're a whole. You're a specific whole. I mean, you look a certain thing, yeah. But there's no one there to get angry. There's no one there to get jealous. There's no one there to try and defend himself against egoic attacks. Imagine that. There's no one there to push him into pleasures that aren't productive. Is it? Yeah. Imagine that. There's just a godly whole.
I might have missed something, but Elliot, the Pashut Pshat, if that Olam Echad Tira B'Chayecha is just that's a pleasure, that's an experience of Olam Haba, reaching that level of tzidkus where you experience that Ahava B'Tanugim. That's all he means, right?
Yeah. Okay, and just to finish off. Now we're answering another question, another one of the questions that we had on the first page. Because Eoiv said back in the very beginning of the Tanya, said Eoiv to the Rabbeinu Shloilem, he said, Rabbeinu Shloilem, Brasa Tzdikim, Brasa Rishayim. Eoiv said to Hashem in the Gemara in Bava Basra, Rabbeinu Shloilem, you created Tzdikim and you created Rishayim. And the Rebbe just says, ha, Tzaddik v'Rasha loika ama. No, he didn't. It's up to you whether you're going to be a Rasha or a Tzaddik. But Eoiv is saying to Hashem, you made Tzaddikim and you made Rishayim. So the answer is... ולכן אמאיר ברס צדיקים וכולי, כתאיסה בתיקונים, שיש נשמס ישראל כמה מיני מדרגות ובחינס. There's lots of different madregas and bechinas, there's lots of different levels, Hasidim, Giborim, Hamizgabrim, Al Yitzram, Mairei Torah, Nevi'im, Chulei Tzadikim, Chulei Ayin Sham. There's Hasidim, there's mighty ones that are able to overcome their Yetzer, there's the scholars, there's the prophets, there's the Tzadikim, there's all different kinds of neshamas in Am Yisrael. And according to this is where the Rebbe says, you're right, there is such a thing as being born with the soul of a tzaddik, and that is a reality, and it's not our business. But he says later as well that there is a way that you can bring on the levels, the spiritual levels of the tzaddik. But throughout the book, it's very clear that if you work hard, there's a good chance that you can become mamash aligned with God. Whether you want to put the label tzaddik on your head or not, that's up to you. Okay, shkoyach. Shall be zeicha to be mamash givoldika tzaddikim. Bezrat Hashem.
Amen.
Okay.